Hello and welcome to Dreaming Live الحب الحب. This is the first episode in quite some time. And before I jump into it, I'm just quickly going to discuss some of the notions that we heavily rely on throughout the talk, which are ideas by Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. First, I'm going to talk about the persona. The persona is technically a mask that people wear in theater. But in Jungian psychoanalysis, the persona is the social face that we present to the world. It is this mask designed to make impression on others and that also to conceal parts, at least, of our true selves. The ego is the center of our personality and it's the primary self-concept. Anything that we identify as I, the collection of things we identify and recognize as I, form the ego. Anything that we don't want to have associated with our self-concept, so anything that we reject about ourselves, is relegated back to the shadow. The shadow is home to all the traits that we don't want to see within ourselves. Some people, while we might not recognize them, others around us might. And it's important to note that two things. That first of all, the persona is important. The mask we wear, it is important for us to function, to coexist within others, even though it's a mask that we wear. And the second point is that not all shadow traits are negative traits. Some positive traits also get repressed back into our shadow. For example, with gender norms, a boy might be told that he shouldn't be sensitive, and the boy might repress those traits. But outside of the light of consciousness, these shadow aspects don't go away. Instead, they kind of develop into their own being and start to project into reality without our awareness. They're causing distortions to our experience of reality. You might find, for example, insecurities or fear of abandonment or things like this in the shadow might hijack our views of things and distort our views of things. So, as per Carl Jung, everyone carries a shadow. The less it is embodied in our conscious life, the darker and the blacker and the denser it is. At all counts, it forms an unconscious snag thwarting our most well-meant intentions. So the less we recognize our elements of our shadow aspects, the darker and denser they are, and they can snag and thwart our most well-meant intentions. And this brings me to the next quote. One does not become enlightened by imagining futures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And so this is really important, which is like, we have to recognize our shadow and society's shadow in order to better ourselves, in order to better society. So shadow work is essentially this process of bringing shadow aspects into the light of our consciousness. And by recognizing them, then we can start to almost negotiate with our shadow aspects and truly begin to work with them. So I did talk now about the shadow, but that was the personal shadow. Jung also talks about a part of our deepest subconscious that's connected to our ancestors and even deeper than to all of humanity. And this is the collective unconscious. It is genetically coded and transferred to successive generations. So that's it. Now I'm ready to start the episode. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Ta voix d'ange plaît et te voilà surexposé. Le mensonge fait naître en toi cette sombrité de perfection. Chemin solitaire qui te conduit, hélas, à l'obsession. Mais c'est une voix qu'on ne saurait taire. Tu chantes en vain sous les lumières. À ceux qui veulent bien n'entendre. la romance de ton temps. Quand tu te retrouves seul face à la glace, ton image pâlie t'avise jour à pile ou face, mais c'est une voix qu'on ne saurait taire. Tu chantes en vain sous les lumières, avaler un poison qui te glace le sang. La paix en toi jamais tu ne trouveras. Et c'est une voix qu'on ne saurait taire. C'est ce mensonge qui te perd. Tu fuis les foules pour cacher ta douleur. Ton cœur qui palpite en toi compte les heures. Sourire encore pour étouffer tes pleurs. Ta voix qui s'éteint.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm excited for this.
I love everything that's behind you.
Oh yeah,
It's
my
beautiful. It's very intriguing.
children's book ideas.
That's very cool. Wow.
So yeah, so I'm gonna just quickly do the intro of the episode while you're here, which because I haven't done an episode in a long time, I want to say hi everyone, welcome to Dreaming Live. The show is dedicated to uncompromised creative expression. Art is the voice of our innermost, as opposed to art as entertainment. And I say dreaming live is to choose who we choose to be, and from the state of being to dream, for our dreams to create, and lastly to persist. So I've hosted artists like David Lynch, Martin Rev of Suicide, Mike Banks, Lydia Lunch, and I've been wanting to host Marie for a long time. You know this, but it's always like I have a specific idea, and the idea is like, okay, this is the person. So it wasn't yet the time, but I'm so glad now is the time because I have been not doing a show for like it's been a long time, since October maybe, and you're the first light to get me out of, not to actually, so it's like now is the perfect time to host you, and you're like that first light that comes, so thanks for that light.
It's an honor, really.
And you're an incredible artist, and like you exhibit in your being this very radiant beauty, but at the same time in your art you really capture the human condition, not just in its beauty, you know. So
Oh
there's
yeah, absolutely. I think in general my artistic process is very existential.
yeah,
It's about the human condition, and it's about, of course it's based on my experiences, but I don't want to only research and talk about my experience as a Canadian woman, French Canadian woman born in 1987. I'm very much interested in the human experience in general. Sometimes my creative process is very rooted in my own experience, but sometimes it's just as someone watching and observing.
Yeah, I was in my interview that I had written, I actually say like you capture the human condition in all its spectrum, from its anxieties and detriment to the hope, to the love, to the inability to love. So it's almost like a diary of your existence, but exhibiting ideas that all of us as humans can identify with.
I like that. Well, if that's how you feel about my work, it means I can go back home tonight and go to bed peacefully, because this is what I try to do.
Oh yeah, it is. Absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, a lot of the themes that you talk about are also in here. So I'm going to be talking about the children's book, but it's going to relate it to some of the stuff that I've seen in your work. But first, I want to just I've said this in past interviews, the idea of Nietzsche's three metamorphoses, which is essentially my character. She goes through these three, and Nietzsche says, like, we start as a camel carrying the societies on our back, all the rules and all the norms, and that's when your like ego is unpolished, underdeveloped, you know, and you have a very strong persona, and you're just carrying that's so she goes, and then you become a lion where you start to kind of fight for your space in society, and then you become a baby where now like you kind of you're not fighting but you start to create. And she goes almost through these phases, and I'm going to start with the first, which is when she's still a camel carrying the burdens of society, still very strong like persona. And so when she's a baby, she's still like very uncontrollable and full of imagination, but she has two lobotomies. One is like a baptism where the priest instills like fear and shame, and the other is school. Like and in the and speaking of school, like I was reading on Paulo Freire and Henri Giroux, who talk about like the production of education, of information, of knowledge is often controlled by the people in power and for their benefit. And so what oftentimes what is learned in curriculums is the pedagogy of the oppressor, which is what Paulo Freire, he's a Brazilian educator who wrote. And the goal of essentially a lot of the way education is going now is to create consumers and workers.
Absolutely. This is how it's been for a while. And this is also what I've noticed as being an artist. Even as being an artist, there's you have to fight for your freedom, because I find that, yes, in school and teachings and in institutions in general, but the new digital institutions, social media, Google, Facebook, name it, really thrive on that, and they push that concept further, because it's not just about inducing the how did you call that, the oppressors
Pedagogy.
pedagogy. It's not just that, it's like literally reshaping the way our desires. It's reshaping in a very sneaky way, or impressions of what we need and what we want. But so being a product, I feel that as a human, modern human being, let's say, if you want to have like a participate in societies, in society, and try to succeed in your career, you have to embrace, if you embrace that technology, which almost everybody does, you have to accept that you're not only a participant, but you're just a product. We are the products, and we are buying other products, and we are being sold our attention, or persona, or online persona is being sold to others just to get some attention, so we can like interact and want and feel, of course, also mostly feel
recognized,
inadequate. This kind of culture makes you feel inadequate, so you always feel like you need to change who you are. You need to work on something, you need to buy something, you need to spend more time, you need to engage, you need to participate. But this is just noise and objects. Most of it is designed to make you feel as if life itself was not enough. You always need to be connected. You always need to be looking into someone else's life. You always need to be advertised about something happening. And the best example is news websites.
Yeah.
They really worked on like creating this constant sense of urgency and cataclysm,
Yeah.
but it's just that you can like refresh endlessly and nothing has really changed. And to me that's a shame, because we are losing the capacity to embrace life in the present moment, which is a dramatic loss.
This is so true, and this is in the end what like what my character, when she goes through, in the end that's what she has, is the present. And
But that's all we have.
yeah,
If you sit down, it's hard to accept, and it's hard to maintain the awareness of that in the modern age, whatever. But this is all we have. The past is gone, and the future is not there yet. This is just simple mathematics. It's like it's just if we watch the timeline, this time we have together right now is the only thing that's really happening for me and for you.
yeah, exactly. And Taya, like in her, like when she's still in that state, like when she's still in the, so yeah, when the teachers, they prepare her to be a consumer and a capital producer. And she arrives, when she graduates, she goes to the market where people work, consume, sleep. That's like the cycle. And when she first arrives, she's given like her name, her ID is her social credit number. Like recently I learned, like I was lazy about a few telephone bills that I paid late, and it like messed up my credit score. Like I paid them. Yeah, I'm like, what
just
the
for
heck?
a late payment on
A
a
phone. I know. Yeah, I'm like, what?
Insane.
Yeah, so I'm just like,
Wow.
so I'm just gonna go quickly over, but there's gonna be more talk. So she stopped by like a data analyst, and he tells her like, you can't go without a phone. We have to track you. That's, I think, something really big also with our time is information warfare, information tracking, information, all of that. How do you feel about?
I feel terrible. I mean, I don't know. It's something we all need to start to be aware of and try to fight it. It's my main problem with this is that it all happened in a very, very sneaky way. Also because there was no laws around digital information. This was something very new. I'm reading Surveillance Capitalism right now. I just started by Shoshana Zuboff, and so I'm just like repeating what I just
Yes, this is exactly it.
started reading in her book. I'm at the beginning, so I cannot like talk too much about it. But what she says is that it's a crime, basically. It's a crime on the human condition, and I totally agree. And all this happened very quickly without our understanding of it, because I mean it's an unprecedented. So there, people have no ways of understanding what happened with their personal information and in the last years, but also there was no laws around that. So this is how it made it possible now for like only a few corporations to own literally all the resources to our use of the internet, which should be broad and different. And it should, and the internet was first off like this utopia, which was supposed to be a place where people would have more anonymity and freedom, and it turned out into being our personal hell.
Yeah.
So people really believe in Web3, that is gonna bring back some of that freedom. Pierre, my husband, is one of those believers, and I'm happy to be with him, in a relationship with him, because he brings hope into something that I find very bleak and dark. But we'll see. I mean, it's not really my field. I'm not
Yeah, yeah. But
really.
how do you feel like as an artist? There's of course pressure to be metrics, you know. There's pressure for metrics and numbers and
Yeah. Oh my
likes
God. You want
and
to talk about that? This is why you don't hear about me at the moment. This is why I withdraw from the scene. It's actually I decided to stop playing live for an undetermined period, but I'm I'm actually making music more. I'm getting back to the state of making music with freedom and pleasure, like I was when I was making music, and I was kind of like a nobody in 2015, 16. And I don't practically don't use social media at the moment. So I go sometimes if I feel like, if I'm in a good mood, if I feel playful, or I feel like sharing something special. And the moment I go, it just ruins it for me. As soon as I go, I feel loads of anxiety. I mean, these things are really made for you to compare yourself to other people. It's inevitable, and it's really it's it's shaped around or need to 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 belong, and it thrives on our fear to be rejected.
uh,
And this is something I always knew, even when I started using Facebook years ago. And I very much disliked it, and I got on there because of music, of course. It was like back in 2012, I think. I was missing all the underground shows, the DIY shows, that were not happening in like the traditional venues,
yeah.
like Sala Rosa. And my friends were like, well, you got to get on Facebook if you want to go to the shows and the parties. I was like, I'm missing my own friends' shows, and everyone was like, did you get the Facebook event? And I was like, what the fuck, this Facebook thing? And my friend Sarah, actually, which Sarah Dion, with whom
Yeah,
I was in the band, she was like, okay, come on, Marie, I'm making you a profile right now. This is how I got on Facebook, and I really hated it.
it,
I
it's
hated it. And then
funny.
eventually I started to find it useful, and it did help me to connect with other people from around the world, and it did have a positive impact on my artistic career. But what it has turned out now, like the fucking meta, whatever. I don't want to hear. I don't want. I just. The least I can participate, the better I am, and the better my music is. I felt in the last years, always, every time I would go on there to share something, I would just end up feeling completely uh, how do you say that?
Yeah, yeah. This like it's an illusion. The whole thing is
Well,
a
I just that it made me feel like nothing was worth the effort, because everything is branded the same, and in the end everyone's trying to share things that are, well, merely important to them, sometimes very important to them, sometimes not so much. But it just makes you feel like a number in a long chain of numbers.
yeah.
And
It's
to me, to the art itself, to the artistic process, is absolutely degrading.
yeah, beautifully
So, I
put.
mean, I'm not against it, but I'm not saying that everyone should get off there, but people should. I think it's important that we find other ways to connect on a human level, and also for the sake of the art,
Yeah,
whatever it's music or performance, dance, whatever.
exactly. I mean, these platforms feed the military. You know, like you're talking about surveillance technology, like Google, Facebook, all of those. They actually work with the military. So it would nice to have if we want to have a platform that's, I mean, Spotify, the founders investing in, I don't have Spotify, but the founders investing in
I don't have
military.
Spotify either. I
Yeah,
don't, there's a profile and my name that someone made, but I don't even have access to that
oh,
because
shit.
I'm not interested.
Yeah,
It's
and
not how I want to find out new music or stream music that I know. I mean, I I just don't like the way it it's shaped. It just makes people to stay in their comfort zone with always like the recommendation. So, oh, you like this? Well, we'll make you listen to something that sounds just like that to make sure you're not you're not uh
yeah, here's your algorithm.
exactly, to make sure you're not thrown off. So we make sure you feel safe and that you don't discover anything new. When music, as a musician, you probably, like myself, grew up always seeking for new music, like going to
Yeah,
the record store
exactly.
even when you have no money, but just to check out what's
Yeah,
what's in there, and then going to friends and be like, oh, you have that album, can we listen to it again? And then mm, and my first boyfriend was much older than me, and he had already played in many bands, and he had this amazing record collection and CD also, and he would let me go back home with a pile of CDs.
oh no.
That to me was meant 10 times, a thousand times more than going on a platform and looking at like some recommendation made by an algorithm that's not even human.
So in addition with the metrics and stuff, like after she works, so then Thea, she finds a job, and after and her job is just like she goes in a machine. I'll show you the machine where that just sucks her time.
Mm-hmm.
And when she goes out, it's like, okay, it's like now time to indulge and consume.
Yes.
And it's like organized entertainment, and I identify more that concept with hedonism. So it's not like all forms of party, like a lot of form of partying and dancing is very liberating, but there is a form of very consumerist hedonism where the freedom is not in like freedom of expression or freedom in art or freedom in whatever, and it's more about pure consumption, entertainment, music, organized, play to the expectation, and this pursuit of impulses, but to me it just seems very consumerist.
It's very sad. It's very sad because I strongly believe that everyone has the potential within themselves to be open, to be independent, to everyone has taste, everyone has uh, ideas, but the way culture and especially music and parties is advertised is looking more and more towards consumerism, and um,
Formulas.
it's everything is based on presentation, the presentation, and uh, it makes it just makes a huge lack of substance, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's
And I believe that everyone, like not just musician or artists, whatever they're doing, I think that every human being has taste and has uh, has somewhere in them a sense of curiosity. But when culture is marketed as just a trend to attract attention, to ultimately make money, not only that it downgrades the artistic experience, but it also downgrade or block uh, your everyday people to just be exposed to the unexpected, and
Yeah.
there is no more danger. Like it's just going to parties or festival, getting wasted, but it lacks the real, like people feel like it's edgy because they're high, but this is not edgy. It's wasting your life. The
Yeah.
edge should be in the danger of going places where you don't know if it's gonna fit your style or your scene or your expectation. That you should be exposed to new kinds of ways of doing things and new vibes, new energy, new forms of music. And yeah, I mean, this is why it's so important for uh, that in every city there should be more,
Expression.
yeah, and also like non-institutionalized events.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
you have a song that says
it
like
always depends on the people who have the time and energy to work for this. Back then in Montreal, we were a solid crew. There was a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and I feel like the pandemic kind of like killed it. And now I see things like a lot. I'm a bit disconnected, but I see more and more like young people. I'm meeting young people I never met before, and they're doing amazing things and trying to keep things alive. And I have so much respect for that. It's so important.
that. That's beautiful. Yeah, so the next step with the Thea, she goes home to work, and she's very tired because she partied, and she goes home and she sleeps, and then she goes into a void, like a vortex, and into her inner world. And here she discovers that she's wearing a mask, which is the persona. I know you like Carl Jung too, right?
Yeah, I've been
Oh, you have an album, also a song, and called Persona too, right?
exactly. This is what it talks about. But also, I've been in an analysis. I have an analyst, whatever you say in French. Je suis en analyse. I'm undergoing an analysis for 4 years now. A union with a union analyst. So yeah, I'm really into
Oh, cool.
Jungian psychoanalysis.
So what's the persona in your way of describing?
Persona is something we all have and we all need. Unless you live in a cave somewhere, by yourself, you're never exposed to anyone else, then maybe you don't have any persona. I'm guessing you won't. I don't know anyone who has lived that experience. So yeah, for the persona is the needed um, expression of ourselves, the mask we present in society. We cannot be 100% ourselves all the time. It's just impossible because we adapt to
Yeah.
the people we're talking. We adapt to people we meet. We adapt to the context, and that's okay. That's like emotional, social
Yeah.
intelligence.
Yeah, and
It's not
to
bad
have some
thing.
peace.
The persona is not a bad thing. It's just something that exists within everyone. The problem for me, what happened with me, is that I got confused with who I was and my persona, and that happened through the years of having a career and being present online and being exposed to a lot of photography and video media coverage of myself and other people. And this is how some people deal really well with that. Good for them. Seriously, I wish I could be like them, but I'm not. Who cares? I got confused, and as an artist, I associated myself, my personal self, to my persona, and it took me a few years to understand that actually what I present to the world is not who I fully am, and that's okay. That's totally okay. And that it is very important to know who you are and accept that nobody will know exactly who you are, exactly. And that's the sadness, but also the beauty of life, because we all have private, secret space within us, which is like our true self. And maybe if you're lucky, you share your life with someone, and you can maybe expect that at some point they will know exactly who you are. Although I don't think it's possible fully, but the persona is, especially as an artist, is it's a must. You know, you cannot, someone who says I don't have a persona, I'm just myself all the time, I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. It's impossible.
Yeah, it's not, but you don't just like piss and while you're walking, or you don't um but yeah, you wrote your song, the words are so beautiful, like you are a poet, right? Obviously.
Yeah. My first form of, actually, even before music, I think I wrote, well, about the same time, but I've been writing since I'm a kid. Of course, my writing when I was younger, when I was a kid, was not good, but it's been a practice.
Yeah, so you said your persona, she leaves you at odds, your soul gets lost in it, and you
Yes.
say, will you let me sleep? And then you said she stands between you and your destiny, your being and your destiny.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. But what did you mean by that?
Well, when
I know what you mean, but I'd like to hear.
That in
You're
2019, so that's like a
probably with what you feel is your calling, right? Like
exactly. Well, yeah, and the calling is to be myself and to know myself.
Yeah.
And but when I wrote those lyrics, I was still mixed up with the idea of the person. Like I hadn't had realized yet that I just needed to understand that it's just two different things, and that the persona is not my enemy. I talk to this persona, but it's like an impersonalization. Do you see that?
Yeah. Your personifying.
In French, yeah, of of an aspect of myself, and I talk to this person as if she's a friend and an enemy, you know, a frenemy. But now, with a few years more, I'm just starting to understand that my persona, my ego, my shadow, it's all me. It's all parts of me, and myself, and that whole combination of entities is who I am in all aspects of my life.
So for people who are not familiar with those, like, so as Marie said, the persona is a kind of mask we wear in order to function amongst people. Like we can't be fully individualistic.
To function, it's not necessarily bad.
Yeah, and then the consciousness is what we know about ourselves, but then there's also a part, the shadow, which is what we don't know, which includes the personal shadow and the universal shadow, which I will discuss in a bit, in a second. So
that's a good point. Yes, there's the personal shadow and our common universal shadow. Yeah, l'inconscient collectif.
Yeah, exactly.
Also the collective unconscious.
So Thea, as so then she starts to become aware. She starts to question and become more critical of her surrounding, and so she starts to navigate possibilities. Like, okay, when society says you have to do this, she's faced with possibilities, and she like she rides them, and she sees how she feels about them. She starts understanding herself, and like making choices to kind of change her life according to what she wants. And eventually, but she kind of overdevelops that and becomes quite opinionated and judgmental, and that's kind of happened to me. So she
yeah, it has happened to me. It happens to me every week, you know. I have a day or a moment, a few hours where I just go like bunkers, you know, and I'm pissed at everyone, and I'm like, fuck the world, you know, and that like fuck the world state, until I realize I'm like, come on, where's my humanity? My humanity just went out the window, you know, down the drain, And I'm like, oh shit, I've been like pretty self-righteous in the last like few hours. And then I stop and I'm like, why? Oh, okay, yes, this is happening, and it's just a way to, protect myself.
Yeah, exactly. So what I the way I kind of when I started to work on my shadow, which is deal with the sides of me that I did not recognize, I also saw like that, like for example, I had to be critical and judgmental in order to develop my sense of this, and I had to. So they kind of, but then I'm like, okay, so now I can develop that without that. Like now I can dismantle being aware of it, so that you can, but also not like completely knowing that it had its benefits, like for a certain time.
Well, you said something interesting. You put in the same sentence, you put side by side two words. You said critical and judgmental. And personally, the challenge, and I think my challenge and what I try to do is to stay critical without being judgmental. There's a fine
Exactly.
line.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. I mean, like I had to be, in order to question society, in order to do that, I became judgmental. But now I can be that without the judgmental part. Now that I see my shadow and I see that
So
part of me.
important to stay critical. I really don't believe in those like everything's nice, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
We're all like going hand in hand, and like this fake positivity. I cannot tolerate fake positivity, especially not nowadays with everything happening. Like I
Yeah,
mean,
of course.
it's always awful things have always been happening since the the beginning
Yeah.
of times, but now with the consciousness we should have and the knowledge we have, historically.
Yeah. If we don't see our shadow,
But this is also coming back to what we were talking at first. I find that the fake positivity syndrome, if I may call it, is also very well nourished by advertisement, branding.
it's very, very true. Yeah, exactly. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, if we whenever things seem too good, there's a deep, dense
The
shadow.
balance, yeah, exactly. Yes.
So yeah, so
I
then
love that.
they,
It's like in traditional Chinese medicine, which I'm really interested in. In Taoism, it's always light and dark, night and day, yin and yang. There's a little part of of darkness in the light, and there's a little part of light in within darkness, and it's the seed. The one half contains the seed of the other, and one half one opposite is only on it's only possible to create the opposite by it being birthed into its opposite. So let's say day and night, uh, uh, air and earth, uh,
yeah,
winter and summer. In winter, the seeds of summer that have been buried into the earth during the fall are not dead. You can't see them. They're not sprouting, they're not growing, but they're alive. They're frozen and they're alive. And they're not frozen, or they might be, but they might be kept warm also within the earth. And so in winter, in the season for going inward, and resting, and it seems dark and cold and lonely, but it's actually within that time alone and that isolation that the seeds from the harvest of the summer and the heat and the passion, the growing, they need to go in a cycle where there's no life but visible, but there's actually it's full of life. And it's true that that period of incubation, that actually new seeds, new sprouts, but also new projects, new
Yeah.
dreams, new ideas will come
Yeah.
up. We cannot always live into action, production, positivity, everyone happy, everyone consuming, everyone having fun all the time. No, it's important to go into phases. I was making this metaphorical comparison with seasons, but I find that as an artist also in the music industry, but in all industries, you're pushed to think that you should never stop. That once you have something good going, you should bank on it and produce and be present and be out there with some footage, always coverage of like whatever you're doing, whatever you've been eating, going to the toilet, you have to like talk about everything you're doing. And it's like, no, what about the mystery? What about the incubation of those seeds?
The inner world. I mean, you have a word, I don't know, like, once you make art, it's not yours. Like the way I process
Yeah,
what you
that's
say,
what
la chambre intérieure, that's what
yeah.
I conceive
Yeah.
as that. But I don't know if
That's
even if
a
it's
reference to a Carson McCullers book, which is called, in French is Le cœur est un chasseur solitaire. So I think it's heart is a lonely hunter or something like
okay.
that.
Yeah.
And it's a reference to a Carson McCullers book, and she wrote this book about it's in seeing it through the eyes of a young girl, and she talks about her interior room. In French,
Yeah.
I read it in French many years ago. But yeah, this is
And you wrote about yeah.
within ourselves. So I just quoted that, but in that song I talk about my own experience about being isolated in the middle of nowhere where my dad lives, and I'm questioning
Yeah.
I'm questioning my intentions on love. And
So you were talking now about the duality, about like we can't, like the night and dark, and what I call is duality, and this is actually a really big theme to me. And so a few months ago, like just something happened to me, and for some reason my brain started to attack me, and I entered. For the first time, I really entered my shadow, which is my unconscious, the part of me that, for those who don't know Jung, the shadow. So as we said, there's the persona, and then there's the consciousness, what we know about ourselves, and then there's the shadow.
yeah,
And entering the shadow can be scary. It was scary for me at the
very
beginning. Yeah, and seeing yourself and seeing all the parts of yourself that you don't recognize about yourself. And I like my
sometimes some that you kind of know but you don't accept. For me, that's my
yeah,
word.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
lot of things that I see in other people that pisses me off, and now I have a little bit more consciousness, and sometimes I'm like, oh my god, this is triggering me because I see this in me and I hate it, and I cannot stand other people doing it. And once I realize that, I'm like, wait a second, maybe that's interesting. So now I'm like more interested in, if I see someone that doing something or saying something that really throws me off and kind of like gets me angry, now I always take a second to be critical and be like, am I reacting because this is truly something that doesn't correspond to my value, or is it also because this person is actually doing something I wish I could do but I don't have the guts to do, or something I see in myself that I don't like, that I dislike, and now it's like exposed in my face through someone else's action? That's where for me the shadow work is happening these days.
yeah. I also see it too. It's like I see now things that I'm like, oh my god, I used to be like this, or but and then, but so for me it really ate me up. And like I wrote like 1 second, I'll show you, or I don't know if I have it. Oh yeah, here. which is like this picture of a female and a porcupine, and self-doubt is like a porcupine, you know, the spikes, except unlike the porcupine, I bleed. So self-doubt like a porcupine, except I bleed, like the spikes, they make me bleed. But in order to get out of it, I had to get out of the idea. I started to read Nietzsche, like Beyond Good and Evil and Taoism. I started to connect the Taoism and even chaos magic and all these ideas, like not only, like you said, that they like, I realize like sometimes I look at clouds and I don't notice that they're moving, but only when I see them in reference to something else, like a moon.
An object like a tree or a building, you understand? Yeah, we
Or
get
a
the
moon.
perception of the movement of the cloud.
Exactly, and that our mind actually can only see in duality, like and
that's how we're shaped. Absolutely.
yeah. And so we divide like hot and cold, but that hot can be cold for another hot. And
exactly, yeah.
So
it's very refreshing once you start thinking like that. For me, it's very refreshing, and it has given me ease into navigating my life.
Exactly. So this is how I started to get out of the absolute paralyzing funk I was in. And actually, this is why.
But it's a work in progress, I guess, for you and for me
yeah.
too. It's so worth it.
But this is why I told you you're the only one who can get me an interview now, who I can interview now, because that's, you know, where I am in and how the ideas. I'm glad that we waited until now to do this, because it's the perfect time.
For me too. I was for many months. I was in the dark, not like negatively. I was just not present. I was not seeing much people. I was not participating into the online life. I was not making music. I was studying another field of interest, and being away was the best thing I could have done. Otherwise, that I don't think I could create anymore. But I just went away long enough to start missing it and bring back freshness. And I guess it's the same for you in your process of writing your book and starting to do talks with people again, is that you feel that you have the interest or the energy.
Well, I'm going through it, and like you happen to fall in my journey. I don't know if like tomorrow there's someone I'm gonna find, or in another year, you know, it just has to happen. I'm not like scheduling. I don't have a purpose other than for it to be very honest, you know. So right now the idea came, and then so here in this process of Thea, you know, so she's like judging herself. This is bad. And I start to beginning of understanding and going above good and evil. And this, like you said, is a very big realization, to the point that I haven't yet fully comprehended it, and it can really lead to. So the shadow, when we see it, it can, if we're being judgmental, it can destroy us. Like it can be so for me, but by dealing with it with this kind of non-judgmental, like integrating the shadow. So for those who don't know, in Jung, he also says like when you go to your shadow, you start in the shadow, there's different elements, like almost like mini me's, and they each have their own ambition. Like my anger, or it has its own objective, you know, and you have different forces, and some of them are positive, like a repressed form of creativity. So you start to have to say hello, and you talk to it, like you say, you personify these many aspects of you, you learn and you start to integrate them so you can deal with them. But you know, you have to really not be judgmental. You have to really be, and this comprehension of non-duality, and it helps forgive oneself and forgive others.
Yeah, and forgivingness, and I more often use the word empathy, but forgivingness it goes down to the same thing. Is should be priority for me. It's priority before making music or making whatever, going places. You know, I want to go places open, with my heart open.
Yeah.
Not that doesn't mean that I'm gonna let everyone come in. but I want to go places with my heart open and then decide if I shut off or if I stay open. But I want to enter places like not just physical places, but like projects, interaction. I want to create with my heart open.
For people who don't realize the extent of the depth of your art in terms of the human condition, there's like two songs, especially like Tunnel and the Lead Sister,
Yes.
who are really like so I wrote the words. I don't, some of them I translated. I can't remember which were in French that I translated because a lot of the listeners, they're not, so I'm not sure. But so you say, I don't know which ones are English or which one I translated. So you talk about going through a tunnel of broken glass and tunnel. You like, why is it so dark? I never came out. It's messy. Don't try to save me. I have to go through the darkness to find myself. No one can come with me. No one can survive anyway here. In a way you say, and that you're stuck. The light is fading. And I hadn't understood that I can't love if I don't love myself. Love is not a reward we receive after suffering. Love is a gift. I can't give myself if I don't belong to myself. Like, these are deep, beautiful words to me. I don't need a VR headset to feel emotions.
Yeah, forgot that. Oh my, forgot that.
Anyway, we have to deal with it. And I love you ended with I love you.
I was on edge when I wrote that. Yeah, no, but to me it's like, okay, the VR thing at the time was like the new like excitement, and I was like,
but it's
that's
also
cool,
true.
but like I mean, I don't need a VR headset to feel like on edge, you know, like life is already pretty edgy with what's there.
Oh yeah. But the whole thing, like you're talking about walking on broken glass and being in the tunnel, and yeah, and then there's another one, Lead Sister, where you say that there's a voice. That one I did write in French, so I'll translate. There's a voice that will not be silenced. The peace in me, I might never find. I run from crowds to hide the pain. Yeah.
So this song I wrote, did you say that at the second person? It's like I talk about someone else, like you.
Okay. Yeah.
Song, but I talk about myself, of course, in that song. But it's a song that I reference Karen Carpenter, the singer of the Carpenters, who had an
anorexia.
Amazing, beautiful voice, one of the greatest voice ever. And yes, she died from complications of anorexia in 1983, and she was one of the first. You know, she's one of the first cases of like celebrities to suffer from that disease, and kind of brought attention, like the very first, brought the public attention to this disorder. But yeah,
have you ever seen there's a film, I can't remember who made it, but a Barbie's stop motion.
What's his name, that guy? He went on to do like
Hollywood. Yeah, but that was,
yeah, and this film is still forbidden. It's like
yeah, Barbie destroyed it. But yeah, for me, that I didn't know that that's the story behind it.
I think it's the family, the Carpenter. It's his brother. It's Richard.
Oh, I thought it was Barbie.
It's like the legacy of the Carpenters who were not okay with that.
Yeah, but I found it on YouTube many years later.
Yeah, you can still find it on YouTube.
Yeah, I heard it was banned for a long time, and that they destroyed all the tapes. But I always think about that.
The tapes are destroyed. Like, it was shown in movie theaters, and when it came out, and then it was destroyed. But you can find it online.
Yeah, but that story fascinates me because it's an example of how that perfection image that it's attached with entertainment can kill you. And in her case, it literally killed her.
Because she was a drummer first, and she had an amazing, beautiful voice. She was drumming in the band. And then at some point, her brother was like, oh, you have an amazing voice, you should sing. But she was singing from the drum, you know, she was drumming and singing. And at some point, the management around the band was like, oh no, you need to be front, come on, you're the singer, you know, you have to be front, and you have to look good. and she was very shy, and she was very uneasy with the idea of fronting, and uh, yeah, she became obsessed, like literally obsessed with her body, and she
Died
she
because of
died
that.
from, it's really sad, she died from excessive usage of laxative and some medical syrup that makes you throw up when you have an indigestion. And
Oh,
that syrup she was taking towards the end of her life was so potent that it made the tissues around her heart to grow thinner. It damaged the tissues around her heart, so she died of a heart attack at 32.
yeah.
She didn't die of hunger, but she died.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of the
A lot of
medications.
a lot of people who die
Um,
from eating disorder, they don't die from eating or not eating. They die from complications around the disease, which is very sad.
yeah, that is so sad. Yeah, that, but yeah, and also something that you talked a little earlier about. Glad I didn't jump into it because I want to talk about it now, which is well, you talked something about the self-righteousness, and one
Yes.
of the things happened when I was dealing with my shadow, and that I made, so my character in her shadow, after she sees her shadow, and she sees herself, she like meets Earth, who is very wounded, the character, and Earth is full of bruises, and Earth tells her like, okay, you're fighting for what's right, but in that process, you're hurting me. And what good does your fight do if you're angry and contributing hatred? So that's what the Earth tells to my character. But yeah, so a lot of this, the good, there's a lot of people, I mean, in the end, we have to find the ways to reconcile. Like, I think there's so much
It's
people
our only
fighting.
hope as a species. It's our it's our only hope.
Yeah, like even myself, often I fight for what is right and who's right and what's right. But I think somehow, and with the social media, it's like a gladiator arenas and people
Absolutely, that's
screaming
well
and
said. I
yeah,
never thought it that way, but it's exactly what it is. It's a ring. It's a boxing ring. It's a gladiator arena. Call it whatever you want. Again, surrounded by this like fake, weird umbrella of caring and connectivity and positivity. What do we really need to all be connected and know what everyone's doing? Not
yeah,
really. Especially if it makes us compete against each other or compete. I don't know if you ever felt that, but I even compete with myself. Like I compete with my online self. It's
yeah.
like a lost battle. I used to. I don't anymore, but I did, and that's a battle you're losing from like the first second you start competing with your online persona. You just you're just a big loser.
And also there's something like a bit like right now, if someone does something wrong, everyone on social media react, and there's the
Of
canceling thing. But
course,
it's like,
the joy, the joy of our generation. This like the new witch hunt. So who are
yeah,
we gonna burn today? Who are we burning online?
yeah,
This is frightening. Also, kind of laughable. If you step back, when I was present a lot on social media, I thought that was frightening. But once you take a few step back, you're like, man, this is also very silly.
yeah. And it's kind of ironic when a lot of people who believe in prison reform
Hmm.
and second chance, and
Hmm.
then you find them online like canceling and
With great pleasure, not just
yeah,
canceling with a lot of energy and
this
determination. This is what really creeps me out.
people who
If
like,
people could take that energy, that all that energy that goes into judging and calling out people online, and bring that energy into the real world, I think we would make much more progress.
that, and to trying to reconcile and to
Yes,
give people second chances, and to
reconcile. Absolutely, I totally understand. I totally agree.
what's the purpose if we say you're wrong, I'm right, if in the end we're just creating more hate and we're injuring
And
earth.
this is when you should be doomed because you make a mistake. Nobody's perfect. Everybody does mistakes. Even the great
Yeah,
people on earth, they will do mistakes. You know, mistakes are inevitable to grow and evolve.
yeah,
We
it's
are a product of evolution, and evolution is trial and error.
yeah. So how can, like, it's so important to, I hope that this kind of avalanche of hatred right now going out of self-righteous motives can just take a step back, and maybe the next step will be we start to think, okay, so we've hurt a lot of people, how do we start, like, what's the, and in the end it's not about us, in the end it's about earth is in pain. How do we decrease the pain that we are inflicting on earth? And uh,
So, so I'm just curious, what age are you directing your book towards? Like, what's the age range?
no, it's adult children's book.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought because I was like, children is
But
pretty
it's just like
cool.
a
But yeah, okay. Well, it's okay. It's meant for everyone. It's
no,
all ages. All
yeah,
ages.
well, no, but my the way I like to strip things down to like a silly caricature, like the way just I express myself, it's like
Your drawings are beautiful, by the way. I'm guessing people
uh,
who listen to this don't see it, but it's really beautiful.
it's funny when I was talking to Regis, he said, "Oh, is that your daughter?" I'm like, "No, actually, that's me. I don't have a daughter."
That's amazing.
So yeah, and then another thing that happened to me is like, I know, like, whatever it means, like the ego death, or I just like hated myself so much that I just like kind of had I went above. I started to see myself from above. It was like a void. I don't know. It was a weird experience, but in a way, a very uh, indifferent and stoic. But you also have songs about that note, like the Perte d'identité, vie et mort d'un ego, the life and death of an ego. Is that anything to do with that, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I did those songs, I was younger and a bit lost, but this is what I was aiming towards. It was existential. I was
Yeah,
definitely existential. I was really looking for myself, to try to meet myself, understand myself in a very confused world with strange life habits. But this is also the time when I started traveling. Père d'identité, I wrote those lyrics. They came. I didn't write the lyrics. They actually came to me while I was in some dark room partying and like having like some stream of consciousness, and I kind of like forgot my name at some point. I was like, who am I? Where am I? It was
wow.
the first time in Berlin. And when I like strangely, when I got back to Montreal, this confusion crystallized and I could like remember things, and I took notes and I tried to go back to that state but make sense of it instead of just being like, this is fucked up, everything's confused, whatever. I was like, no, something interesting happened, happened at that time. And I just tried to go back in my memory and catch the words, because I remember being able to have a conversation with myself in my head but not being able to articulate the words. And
Yeah.
I went back to but that's not how I work anymore. I like to be very dead sober and focused these days, but this is how it came up to me at that time because this is the phase I was in. But yeah, I guess just I was just living outside of the norm. This is what I needed to understand who I was.
So also with the regards to like the shadow and to integrating the shadow. So for listeners, again, there's the persona, there's the consciousness, and then when we face our shadow, according to Carl Jung, like if we don't recognize parts of our shadow, then they sometimes like hijack us in a way and overtake our
could attack you or
yeah.
make you do silly things that you regret. That's how
Yeah.
my shadow works. Usually, if I don't pay proper attention to some parts of myself or some elements and I try to brush it off, get rid of it, it will come back, and usually it will come back in my shadow acting out.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and then I might do things I regret.
Yeah, and it's really like he also talks about how a lot of people don't even realize that they have a shadow, and like the less aware of your shadow you are, the less control you have over your shadow, being able to seize. So like you say, when
I
you're not
wouldn't use
conscious,
the word control, but like integrating.
yeah, integrate. So bringing it to the light, yeah. But I mean, when you integrate it and you understand its motives, and I feel like you don't just let it like burst, that's
No.
yeah.
You just things, aspects of yourself find their right place, and then every all of these
Yeah.
aspects of you can work together.
So yeah, so in also all of this, like I was reading like Taoism, and I was reading another things. Did you ever get into Stoicism?
No, I know what it is, but no, I'm interested though. If you can tell me anything about it.
So like it can be summarized with this idea that you don't suffer from something, an event, when something bad happens. You suffer from your judgment about the event.
I
So
agree.
like
Up
so
to a
that
certain point, but yeah, that's very very close to Taoism.
exactly yeah, and it's so it's ancient Greek,
Yeah,
but then
yeah, I know that.
but then there was like it was written by one of the writers that I like most, which came after, is Marcus Aurelius, and like this man was going through a plague that killed millions of people. He was at war that he didn't want to be in. He became the ruler and he didn't want to be, and it was he just there's a book he wrote called Meditations,
Yeah,
Pensées pour moi-même, which is just
I remember you mentioned that when we met.
yeah, it's just thoughts for himself that he didn't want anyone to read, and somehow some people preserved it and it was read. And his so he really talks about when the importance of accepting life, accepting death, accepting pain, accepting this, and thinking of this is, I guess, more Buddhism, or I forgot, Hinduism, I think, is thinking of things as if they're borrowed. So something comes to you, but it's not going to stay with you.
It's lent to you. You borrow it. Yeah, like your body has been lent to you, and it will go back to earth. Actually,
To the exactly. So so to just practice how we let our judgment of things affect our feelings, and
I'm
that can
interested. I like this philosophy. I will look it up.
yeah, that book Pensée pour moi-même is so beautiful.
I took note in my phone when we
Okay, cute.
mentioned Arabia. I have it. I still have it. I
Yeah.
want to read it.
When we, so for people who are listening, we saw each other again at the DJ Stingray show, and when we started talking, I told Marie, it's like, okay, now don't talk to me. We have to continue this conversation on and record it, because we can't continue. This is too magical. I felt I was like, okay, let's wait, and this is what I want to do. This is how I'm gonna get out of my.
That was a great day.
Yeah. Okay, let me see what's next. Okay, so now we can talk about sentiment, which is your song Sentiments, where you say, and I'm going to translate, I drowned away my regrets to the bottom of the water. La bouée est restée, the floaters remain at the top. I learned how to swim. So nice and beautiful. And like the song is beautiful. The reflection of the light, oh, how beautiful it is. The sun in the sky, the birds are flying. I'm not doing any justice for the French words. I'm just translating. My laugh that resonates. Just a lot of beautiful. I learned how to float after the chaos. I learned how to live. How we learn to live after the chaos. and the breath of the wind on my skin, and my tears are drying. Yeah, so I want to talk about that. That's a beautiful also.
Thank you.
You what like how is that how you felt when you wrote it?
No, unfortunately, well, fortunately enough, because I feel like that now. So, like a lot of my songs, it was an aim to get there.
Wow.
After writing this song, I had 2 more years of like dealing with a lot of stuff in my personal life and health. But it's funny because I feel like that now.
So you made it.
I made it. Yeah, it took a while, but I made it. But a lot of the songs I write is often an aim to
Yeah.
this is how I want to be, or this is how I wish things could go. But it's like throwing an arrow, you aim for something, but sometimes you miss, sometimes I don't know.
Yeah, so in my
Not time for the arrow to travel to its final destination. I don't think I have arrived, but I definitely feel much more closer to that state.
I
I'm
don't
talking
think we
about
will
it.
ever I don't think we'll ever arrive, but it's a constant practice, I think. And
Something I noticed is that um, integrating a sense of playfulness and lightness really helps.
that's beautiful.
I think that I believe that people often I for a long time associated spirituality with um, asceticism, which can be true, but also with rigidity. That's what I meant. And
Yeah.
the more we manage to detach from our rigid tendency, I feel the most chances we have to
To be in the present.
grow. Yeah, and ultimately to live in the present, which is the hardest thing to do, but the only thing to do at the same time. It's so
Yeah.
weird because being in the present is like the best thing. Living in the present is the best thing you can do out of your life, but it's also one of the hardest things to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously when I was when I'm dealing with my shadow, like my regrets were coming in. It's even silly stuff, and so yeah, obviously, uh, one thing, like another thing in Stoicism, I guess I forgot, like maybe I might be wrong if it's in Roman or in Greek, but I think it was in Roman. The word for happiness, like there's a word called equanimity, which means to be in balance and harmony, and that was used to mean happiness by a lot of Stoics. So so I think that the way to reach the song sentiment for me is to reach this kind of balance and to be present, to be in the moment, and to know what is truly most important for the future, and keep it at heart, like for what's our calling or what's our mission, and what ways we want to minimize, or I want to minimize hurt to the planet. Like, I guess what I'm saying is I'm reaching a point. I mean, I was really trying to, like you say, intellectualize what I was going through also, but luckily I've been seeing a therapist, and she's like, I noticed through her that she's just, or she tells me, just what is your body feeling right now, or what is your, and
Being aware of what your body is calling for is a very good way to be in the present.
Yeah, exactly. So to reach, that, and I think, being in the present means not being in the regrets, and it means not being in the stress of the future.
But to me, like regrets or when painful events or situation, I feel that what's important for me is to stand by my pain, sit with my pain, but not be the pain.
Okay, that's exactly what my therapist is trying to do with me now. Okay, go
That's
ahead.
wonderful. That means you have a good therapist.
Oh, she's
And we
amazing.
cannot just wash out the pain. We need to stand by it, you know, almost like hold it in our arms and be like, hey, man, I totally recognize you. Hello, pain. This was painful, or this is painful. But without trying to just make it disappear, it will go away naturally. In
Yeah.
due times, if you can sit by it, stand by it, whatever.
So Alice Coltrane, I don't know if you know that this story where when her husband John Coltrane he died, she reached a point of close to death. She wanted to die, and she meditated for something like weeks. And she said she came so close to God, and she said I came inches away from wanting to die. But when she came out of it, she said for the first time she just didn't owe anyone anything. And whatever she said kind of for me reflected in your words of renegade breakdown, which is like, I don't want to, she said, I don't owe any, like in the music, anyone anything. She was just making music for her temple, and like no one can own me. No one can tell me what to do. No one can.
That's wonderful. That's the way to go. That's just for me. That's the ultimate way to be a musician. This is
Yeah.
this I always wanted that, but never had the strength to do it until lately. And it takes courage, but it's so worth it. And I mean, I'm miles away from Alice Coltrane's experience, but from my humble experience, detaching from structures and expectations of the music industry has been a blessing. I'm not like being like, I'm not anti anything, by the way. It's just that I found balance in not planning too much. And I have decided to stop listening to anybody that will tell me, no, but you know, this is how it works. No, we have to do it this way because this is what everybody's doing these days. Fuck you. Like, seriously, there's as much ways to do things as there is musicians or artists.
Yeah.
There should not be a way.
Is this Renegade Breakdown? What is it? Or touches on some
The
of
song,
these?
yeah, the song, not
Yeah,
the
the
album.
song. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the song, definitely. Yeah, this is what it's about.
Yeah, and I think speaking of that, so in my character, I haven't, but like you say, like in her ideal world, she realizes what's most important to her, which is her calling to create, and she realizes like, I also, I have a lot of anger from the injustices of the world, from Palestine, from everything around Iraq, like all of this stuff, and I like a reaching point where I'm going to contribute what I can in the ways that I can.
And
And
your
I
contribution is already great.
oh,
It's great, but I understand that it might be hard to be satisfied.
but I mean, that's my point. My point is, in what I will do, I'm not going to do things that I don't need to do. I'm going to do the things that what I can do, and I cannot cry about what I cannot do, but I am going to do what I can do, which for me is the children, whatever I'm sure it's insignificant, whatever, but so she pursues her mission with in her mind that any kind of situation that happens in front of her, to the best extent that she can, to try to reconcile, to try to I was reading a book by someone who writes about Carl Jung, and I don't know if it's true, but he says that the original word for religion, I guess in Latin, is ligere, which means to ligere, to reconcile. And that should be the true, so in an argument or any triggering situation, finding ways to reconcile, just so that she can hurt Earth less. And then so the last scene is she runs for her dreams, but in a like peaceful, like balanced way, not in a stressed way. and she then sees Earth. This is her when she dies, and she hugs Earth and fall, and and then with that, there's the quote by Marcus Aurelius, who's the Stoic. He says, I have it here. And here, the fraction of infinity allotted to each one of us, absorbed in an instant back into eternity. So I think really acknowledging death really also liberates you, because like all of these regrets in the end will not matter. Like no one's going to remember.
Absolutely not. Definitely not.
In this eternity of time, we're like a pretty, but I really, so just I think the recognition of death is also a good step towards,
I'm very grateful to have been given that fraction of time, and I'm trying to use it as much as I can with the most curiosity and openness, but it's also a struggle to live. No, and for me it's very comforting to know that there will be an end, and I will enjoy this life fully knowing that it will end.
Camus, he talks about how when an actor goes on stage, because they know the character is 2 hours long, they do everything they can with it. And you also always see, like, I mean, if I know when I'm gonna die or something, I think I would do more things, or I don't know, like there's the urgency to live, like recognizing death, I guess, puts in perspective what really is important, what is not. And a
lot of people, it's nothing new what I'm gonna say, but a lot of people that had near-death experience, they say it's the best thing that happened to them, because it really changed their perspective and allow them to live fully.
Like people who survive near death, exactly. And me too, I did some of the best changes in my life and some of the toughest times of my life. So I'm just gonna one last thing, which is a part, it's in the middle, but I thought as we were talking, I thought to leave it till now. So Marshall Allen, the leader of the Sunro Orchestra, when he was trying to join the Sunro Orchestra, he would play perfect, but Sunra would tell him it's perfect, but it's not what I want. Because he didn't want him to use his intellect.
Yes.
So, and then he essentially learned to shut off his intellect and like tap into that magical, like his intuition and imagination to its fullest extent. And so here, like, and I talked a lot about this, about the depth of the creative flow. Like how, what are some beautiful, like how is the creative flow? It can be so magical, no? When you're like in that realm of intuition. And
that's the best thing. The creative flow, it's like blood flow. It's like energy flow. It is real. When it's flowing, it is real. And to me, it's like the sacred fountain, whatever, call it whatever you want. But that flow, like what my daily life is organized around, is aiming at nourishing that flow. And when the flow is not flowing, which happened to me in last year, it means something's wrong.
I don't know how to live without the creative flow. My life stops being functional.
Yeah. And that's where I will tend to get into self-destructive behaviors. And I think creative flow is not just like art. It's like cooking a good meal is involves being in a creative flow.
Living creatively, like
creatively, being spontaneity, being able to be spontaneous. That's all part of that creative flow to me.
Yeah. So okay, let me see what. So she and Mike Banks, in our talk, what's very interesting is he essentially talks about how when I asked him, like, what does you are mean? And essentially one of the things he implied is like, find out who you are. And I told him, you can never take that away from me. Even when I eat bread here, I don't feel like it's who I am. Like I'm not in home, I'm not in my land. And he said, you know what my rage is? He said, I don't know what my bread is. I don't know who my God is. Like it was all robbed from him and from all of the, descendants of slavery who were stolen, and they don't know their ancestors. And he said, but you know how I believe that anger travels through DNA? He said, I believe beats travel through DNA. And that he would, and so he said, for us to get lost, but we found ourselves through the music. And if you look at like improvisation of Black music, of all of that gets like, I feel like that gets into, I wasn't reading Carl Jung back then, but the universal unconscious. Like, he's saying that he connected with his ancestors through the music, the ancestors that he was disconnected from. And in Carl Jung, we talked about the persona, we talked about the consciousness and the shadow, which includes things we don't accept and recognize about ourselves, as well as some repressed positive things. It's important to know that there are some positive things, but then there's the universal shadow, the universal unconscious, which is maybe, what is it? How would you describe it? The universal unconscious.
Oh, it's very tough to describe the universal unconscious.
It's like
it's so broad. It implies everyone's consciousness. It's I don't know. It's something I'm not. I don't feel that I have the words to describe yet. But just to say, what about you were mentioning before? It's absolutely beautiful and inspiring. I have to say it very candidly, naively. Mike Banks is the most inspiring person I've ever met in my life. It's music for sure, but hear him talk in front of an audience is, for me, one of the most life-changing encounters I've had.
Yeah, like that.
Nothing to add.
The talk I had with him, I listened to his
profound and very, very intelligent, emotionally, and
he's a sage, like a modern, like he's a sage. He's a sage.
To me, he is definitely.
Like I listened to his words so much to that episode that I started to think in his voice. Like I was listening to it, like every time I'm listening, I'm like, man, this is insane. Like his words are so powerful. Last point, which is like, I think like what Mike Banks was saying, and the universal unconscious is a part of our unconscious that is a part of our conscious that Jung thinks is universal to all humans. And I think like through art and through the creative flow, we can access the unconscious, we can access the universal unconscious. And in that way is the final word I want to say, is that art, it saves our humanity through systems. I think that's where I'm trying to.
Wow. Yeah. That's deep. Yeah. I would say like expression of self art, but it doesn't have to, like, I don't.
Yeah, but when I say art, I mean
like
any voice
art,
of the
anything you do artistically with passion. Yeah,
just what I say is art is
crafting anything, putting energy into something.
But art as the voice, I call art as the voice of an innermost, so like any kind of expression of the inner self, or the inner self. So that and the expression of our inner selves in the end, it carries our humans through all these systems. But that's it. Okay, you have to go.
Right. It carries our humanity. Yeah. Absolutely, that's beautiful. It's a good way to say it and end this conversation.
Okay, love you so much. Thank you for this. I can't believe 2 hours passed so quickly.
It was a real pleasure. It was
much love.
Sorry for the listeners if you're still listening, but we can keep on
talking. We'll see each other soon
in real life.
Yeah. Okay. Love you so much. You are such a majestic being, and I'm grateful so much for your existence in this faction of infinity of time.
Same about you. I'm very fortunate. I'm very grateful that we met.
Likewise. Okay. Bye, dear.
Bye. Take care.
So, for anyone interested in shadow work, I really recommend a YouTube channel called The Diamond Net, run by a Emerald. I'm not promoting her. She does not know I exist. I just really appreciate her channel and her work about the subject. And I do believe that to work on society's shadow, we have to start with working on our own shadow and looking at how we can ourselves heal Earth or start to heal Earth, and looking at our shadow so we can minimize the pain that we inflict on Earth. That's it. Thank you so much and much love.